Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to check out a brand new mastering tool from TC Electronics called Finalizer. So first off, if you're new to my channel or my videos and you like what you see, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell so you can be informed when my new videos come out each time. So TC Electronics, at the time of me recording this, have just dropped I guess a major release for them in the regards to a standalone mastering tool called Finalizer. In this video, we're going to do a run through of most of the features overview, but because of the detail of this tool, I am having to break it up into 2 to 3 videos. We'll see how we go, but there will be more videos to come because the extent of it is just way too much for this video and it will just go on for forever. So we're going to run through it as best as we can, check out all the features as best we can. I had never used this program when I am running through this, so bear that in mind. I'm learning this program at the same time that I am actually filming the video to show you and teach you how to use it or what features it has, etc., to see if it's something worthwhile for you or me to get to master songs. So the point of it is it's a standalone mastering tool. You don't need any other software at all, really. You just purchase this piece of software, fire it up. It's like a standalone, mastering DAW software, whatever you want to call it. And it has all of your modules, etc., in it from TC Electronics, and it allows you to perform mastering tasks on your song that you've obviously recorded and mixed, and get it out to the world to listen to. So it's got some great promise to it. It's not at an unreasonable price for a product of this size. So let's just get into it and I'll show you around the tool. All right, so I've just downloaded the trial version of Finalizer. And first off, what's really interesting is that it is a very small file. Now, I don't know whether the paid version is this small or whether it's purely the trial, but it's really interesting. You know, it's like 36 meg in size, and that's it. There's nothing else to it. So again, I'm not sure, unless I actually bought this, whether there is a difference and you get a massive product with lots of things in it that you just don't get in the trial, but we'll find out soon enough. But first off, I have just downloaded it. It came as a zip file. I extracted it and just exclude that folder there because that's just a song that I'm getting ready to be able to play with in this. But basically that's all I get is this executable. Now, I did try and run this first just quickly because I thought it was going to install something so I'd be prepared for this video, but it just ran the application. So I've actually shut it down, and I'm just going to show you that if you download a trial, you just get this executable. So if I just double click on this to run it, it just runs this program straight away, executable, and comes up. All right, now when I first did open this, it warned about an audio interface. So because this is the second time I have opened it, it hasn't said anything about that. So let's just check some settings here. So, okay, I mean, just to give an idea, here's the layout. This is what it came up as in my program. All right, so I'm just going to go in, this is a standalone program. Okay, it's not a plugin. It is its own entity. You don't need anything else to run it. This is purely just that executable. And if I go into preferences, we can see a few things here. We've got auto save enabled. Obviously, we can turn that on or off. Our loudness units, we can have it set to LUFS or LKFS. So I'm going to leave it at LUFS. Transport mode is locked to logic. I can't change that. I'm not sure what that is. We've got a reference gain of minus 6 dB and a dim gain of minus 20 dB. We'll probably find out what these things do as we go through it. So here is our audio interface. So we're going to have a choice of ASIO or Windows Audio. And if you're running any other DAW recording software and you've got an audio interface, more than likely you're going to have an ASIO driver, especially if you're on Windows. And that's the one we want to pick because that is the lowest latency, best performing. Now, it has picked an old Line 6 pod that I don't have, so I'm going to change it. Now, normally in my situation, I would be picking this Universal Audio Apollo Firewire for my audio interface. But in the case of this, because I am running some screen capture software, I actually need to be recording from, or sending to this voice meter program. And that is going to allow the audio to be played out so that you can hear it in this screen capture. If I put it to the Universal Audio, you won't hear anything from this software. We'll leave it at 1 and 2 at the moment and just see what happens. Our sample rate is locked and our buffer size at the moment is sitting at 256. We could obviously change that if we find our performance is not great, but it seems to be locked, but I'm going to guess that we would need to change that at our actual audio interface or this software here. And then we have cloud. So by the look of it, they give you an option to create an account on their finalizer.com site. That will save all of these preferences to the cloud. So I guess you can run this software anywhere on anybody's computer. And as long as you log in, you can get your settings back. We've got some keyboard shortcuts, which I'm not really going to go into here because it's going to be something, if I was using this more seriously long term, maybe I'll learn these shortcuts, but simple ones, you know, play and pause, space. That's good enough. And we've got an about section here with a current version. It says it's up to date, so that's good. And we've got automatic updates. So having not used this software before, I will be referring to the manual on another screen where I need to, but I'm also going to wing it a little bit here. So, you know, it gives us a bit of a hint here. It says empty project, drag an audio file to it. And that sounds nice. So what I am going to do is I'm going to open up a song that is unmastered. And I'm going to drag it there. Would you like to copy the imported audio file into the project file? Why not? So we could obviously leave it where it is and just reference to it, or we could actually copy it. So I'm going to copy it just for the sake of, that's usually the way I do things. I like to keep things together. Okay, so now we have a bit of a waveform here. We've got our audio looking down here. Let's just see if it even plays. Get this system working here. So I could press space or I could press this button here. So we've got a few controls up here. So we can open About Finalizer with that button. We've got our transport controls, so we can go back. So you can see we've got some pop-ups happening over here in the window. Back, forward, that's going to be go back to the start of the track, play, and we've got looping. We'll have a look at these. Okay, so that is playing. I'm gonna see if I can turn this down just a touch. I know what I'll do. I'll use the dim control. Okay, so over here, just quickly while I'm pressing it, we have a dim control. So let's play that again. Okay, but they also had a reference control which dropped it down to 6 dB, and that was that settings in the, if we have a look at the settings in here, we had reference -6 and dim -20. Now, for the sake of this, I'm going to drop this down a bit because -20 is a little bit too low for what we want to do. Let's try -9. Okay. That's pretty comfortable there. So if we go back to there, okay. We'll find out more about this section here, but I'm going to use reference when we are talking, and we've still got the dim control, so I can always adjust that as well. Actually, since this is doing some funny stuff here, I'm going to actually put that back. So I'm going to put that back to -6 because we need to find out exactly what that is. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to bring the dim control up a bit. So -10 seems to be the highest we can go with our dim control. We can go really low, but -10 is the highest. So let's go with that. And that way maybe dim will work. That's good. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to save this first, and we're going to put it in just where I've got the file, just for the sake of it. I'll create a new folder. Let's just call it mastered. And we'll go there. And again, I'll just call this mastered, just for the sake of it. So obviously we would call it something else normally. Okay, so continuing on with the top buttons here, we'll just try and go through the layout. And we've got obviously a transport control, as I said. We've got a loop function here that's turned on, off. We can play, all that standard stuff, nothing special there. We've then got this Spectral Web section, and we've got a few options. We've got this Spectral Dynamic Contour, SDC. We've got a real-time spectrum, and we've got a average spectral curve, AVG. All right, so we will talk about these three different views shortly, but let's continue on. So we've obviously got this little window here that you can see is updating with some information and some timer information. Over here we have our compare section. So we have an A, B, and a reference. Okay, so the A button here states that it's sort of like a before, but it does state that it is the source track after any potential sample rate conversion and loudness normalization defined in this prepare module. So it is the source before major changes, but does have a little bit of preparation work done to it. B is the resulting track processed by all of the modules. So this is what we are actually working on. This is what we are what we're hearing changes. So we can quickly flick between the two to compare the sort of before and after effect. And the reference button allows us to reference what we've done, what we're doing, to anywhere up to 20 reference tracks can be loaded in here. So it's going to let you reference it to a song of some form, which I'm guessing is just going to be some songs that we upload ourselves into this section here. And you can see off to the side here with the main elements here, you've got that same option sort of here. You can see A, B, and then changing it over to reference there. And no, I thought we could switch between the two there, but we can't. That's probably something that I would have liked to have had to be able to switch there, because it just seems like they're buttons to press to me. It just looks like an obvious place to switch between the two, but no, you do it up here, which is not a big deal. All right, so when we switch over to the reference mode here quickly, while we've got the button here, I'm going to drag in some songs. And these are actually mastered songs from my album. And they're actually 24-bit WAV, so this should be a good quality compared to what we're doing. And drag it over and you'll see that we have all of these files here. Now the naming obviously is not coming out real well because I've got my name in there. And it's currently doing some analysis of each of the tracks, I guess. So it's building this waveform. You can see a spinning thing there, and you can see as I click on it, it says analysis in progress. So the software must be in the background when you load a song in, doing analysis of it and creating this picture straight away without you even playing it. And it's done that for all of the tracks there. So I dragged the files in, but we obviously have a plus button here that we can add some songs, and we can also remove some with this garbage bin thing here. We can collapse the tracks as well with this little arrow. And you can see we've got all of the sort of metadata type stuff information here. And we've got some statistics of the file type, the length, sample rate, the loudness of the song. So we're getting an instant sort of reading of the LUFS loudness of each of these songs. Hence why it obviously did some analysis. Now, the other thing we can do up here is that we have these modules, and we can actually hide various modules. So in this case here, we can make this graph extremely big. And we can bring certain things back in. So if we want just that reference track there, we can bring it back in. If we want that, and if we want the module library there, we can bring it back in. We also have this finalizer.com thing, which I'm guessing if I click on it is going to go to the website. Actually, it says upload. So we would want to open Cloud Preferences here, log into our account, and then we could upload straight to finalizer.com. So let's discuss this Spectral Web section here. And just to make it a lot easier, I am going to get rid of all of those so we can see a nice big picture. So we can see straight away, if we were looking at this actually goes from 20 Hertz all across the bottom here up to 20 kilohertz, which is giving us our sort of maximum range that we would expect from a frequency spectrum graph. And on the left here, we're going from 0 dB down to minus, that's just about 67 dB there. And again, this graph can show the A, the B, or the reference, and it changes colors everywhere to match. So all of these buttons, this side over here, all changes colors to match which one you're on, so you can keep track of what you are actually looking and listening to. All right, so let's talk about the first one, spectral dynamic contour. Now, this is I'm not sure if it's brand new and this is the only product that's ever used it. It's something that's new to me. I haven't actually really seen it done this way before. So this is a bit of a learning curve for me. But it refers to, as its name, spectral dynamic contour. What they're indicating is that this graph is going to show you both spectrally and dynamically the content, the detail for the full track. Okay, so it's showing you everything for the entire song. It's done an average, and this is what it's come out with. And it's supposed to give you not only the detail, but also the dynamic range and some various other components there. So as the graph shows here, based on this bottom one, here's all our frequency spots here. So as we use a guide here, this is 250 Hertz. And then there is 6 graph lines here that are representing something slightly different. So the top line here represents our absolute peak. This is our 100% maximum level of each of the frequency areas across our song, our entire song. Number 2 is 98%. So this is the level of each of the frequencies 98% of the time through the song. Then the next level is 83% of the time. It's at this level. 50% of the time is at this level. 21% of the time, it's at this level, each frequency. And 8%, or the softest, it's at this level. Okay, so the concept of each of these is to try and give us a representation of how much dynamic range we have at each frequency space. So when we have two lines here that are very close together, that means we don't have a great deal of dynamic range between them. So between 100% and 98% of the time, these are very similar. So they're sitting pretty close together. There's a little bit of dynamic movement between them, but not a great deal. When we get down to the next level, then we've got a bit more dynamic range. So like especially here, there's a fair bit of movement between these two here. And we get down to our softest, there's even a lot more. So if we had found a section here where each of these is quite close together. So if we say, even just looking at, for instance, this spot here, 125 Hertz, even though there's a fair bit of dynamic range, there's less dynamic range here than there is, say, between 60 or somewhere else where there's a bigger gap. I can't really find one. They're all pretty even. But the distance between here and here is a lot less than, 0 or minus 60 or lower up to here. So there's more dynamic range here than there is here. So if this was really squashed up, then you would start to see a lot less dynamic range. So you can see in the case of this song here, this peak here is indicating that everything is sort of squashed a bit more here. There's less dynamic range here. This spot here is definitely a lot less dynamic range around this frequency space here. Whereas some other spots here, like this one, it dips down quite low. So there's a big change somewhere along the line there. Now, if we actually play this song, so it seems to have automatically level matched as well our reference to our source, because you can see the waveform here. This one is very heavily limited. Well, not heavy, it's limited. This one is very dynamic. It's been mixed. It hasn't been mastered at all. But level volume. And we don't see any changes in this graph. So this graph here is an analysis of the song from start to finish, done in the background when you load the song in. It's not something that's happening on the fly. Okay, so another option we have on here, which is on by default, is this button here, which shows the difference between the A and B contours. So it stops us having to switch between these two to see the changes on the graph. When we're on the B channel here, we have this button available, and at the moment it's on. So in theory, it would be showing us the difference between the A and B. Now, we haven't processed B yet, so there is no difference. Okay, we're not seeing any difference. It looks pretty much like the lines are identical. Okay, there might be a minuscule difference, but you can't see it. And if I turn that off, we are only then seeing the B waveform only without any of the A differences. Well, so we'll look at that in a bit more detail when we do a bit of processing. Okay, so if we go across to our real-time spectrum here, it looks like nothing changes whatsoever. We still have the same SDC look across it, but if I now play the audio, we get what we would normally see on a spectrum analyzer. So you'll see two waveforms here, the one up here and this one here. This top one here, the darker one that's sitting in the background, is our real-time peak. All right, so here's our peaks. You should see them head up to these levels here, which is why that's our highest. And the lighter one in the front there is our RMS or average, which is going to line more closely to this middle medium range they've done there. And again, you've got the same button, the difference on or off. All right, and then we have our average spectral curve. Now, this obviously looks a lot different to the last one. So what we're seeing on this view here is an average energy for each frequency calculated across the full track. And it's actually using it and showing a comparison between each of the sources here. So it looks a bit messy here, but what I'm going to do is just for the sake of it, I'm going to remove all but one track, and it's not the same song, this track here, so it should look quite different. Now, in reality, we would probably see three lines in general here, and what we would be seeing is the original source, and you can see when I click on it, it's this blue line here. We would then see our modified source, which is the green line, and we see the reference, which is the purple line. Now, we're only sort of seeing two because if you see when I click on A, the B and green line are identical, so they are sitting on top of each other, making it look like there's one line. But in reality, there is three lines on here, so we get a quick look at the average balance of the song, of the frequency spectrums, looking at it between all the three, and we get to see them very quickly here. If we play the song again, nothing changes on this graph. There's no difference whatsoever. So we can quickly see how our track is balanced compared to something else. Say our reference track. If our reference track is our aim here, we would say that we need to add a bit of top end. Maybe we need to do a bit of a cut around here, reduce this a bit of a boost here at the 500. Maybe a tiny dip here. So there's a little bit of balancing we could do, bit of a filter down the low end here, bit of a boost on the kick drum. But this is all going to depend on how accurate your reference is to what you're trying to get. If you go and pick a totally different genre of reference that doesn't even compare even closely to your song, then you're really going to be looking at a graph that just isn't a good representation. So in our little waveform graph over here, we have two views. We have our standard waveform, and then we have this loudness envelope. So if we go back here and play it, you can see that's our normal audio, and here's our loudness waveform. So it's sort of representing how loud the signal gets with our LUFS here. All right, so we can also select some regions, so we can pick a spot. So up the top here, we have the entire song, and we can pick a section of it, and that section is now represented down the bottom. So in its normal state, it seems like they've just got two of the same waveforms there, but obviously when you start to use regions, then you start to get some differences, which you can see here. And The values of this graph here are indicated based on this region. So it's making decisions and calculations based on the region and not the entire song anymore. And the other thing it does is obviously can be used to loop. So you can see it'll just cycle through this region over and over again if we have loop on. So you can diagnose and have a look at details of specific sections of your song. So if you have like quiet part or a loud part, you can have a look at those parts there and determine some settings and how dynamic things are or how crushed they are. All right, let's check out this modules section here. So info-wise, we can set an author, we can set a title of a track, we can add it to the library. So this, I'm guessing, is we can add a module chain or something like that into this library section here. So we obviously have a library of module chains and various modules. So these are our inbuilt plugins. So at face value, there doesn't seem to be any settings here that allow us to use any third-party plugins. So it's not going to give us any capacity for installing our own VSTs or anything like that. They are all basically included in the software here, all of these features. So if you're looking for something else, then you're probably out of luck with this at this stage. Now, whether that's something they'll add later, I guess that's up to them. But there seems to be a good complement of modules here. All right, so if we have a look a bit more detail at this section here, this is obviously what they're referring to as our module chains. So if we take that one away, it works in sort of an order fashion here. So we have our prepare section, then our module section, then we have a limiter module, and then we have our export. So our prepare module is the very first thing that comes up, and this is obviously based on having an audio file. So we need to have an audio file in here for this to happen. And we get some details. You know, we've got the module name, and we have our audio file. So we get a name of the file format, the length of it, and the path. And then we get some details about the file itself. So we've got our sample rate, we've got our track loudness, and this is original. So this is before any processing. We have our loudness, we have our true peak, and we have our peak loudness ratio. So I guess that's sort of like our dynamic range there. And because this file is a mixed and not a mastered version, you can see the details of that. Okay, and then we have a process module here. So we can, I guess, adjust our sample rate here if the audio was brought in at a different format. So let's say it was brought in at 48K and we want it to be 44. We could set it to 44. Now in our case here, it's already 44. So I could put it to original. We could change it to 48K if we wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. We have a SR filter and balance, short or steep. And then we have a level normalize. So we can just stick with whatever recommended is. Or we can go with original or pick one of these LUFS levels. So they do state in the manual that the recommended setting is going to take into account the peak to loudness ratio to set the normalization level. And then we have our prepared signal. So this is what it has done to it and what the results are. And we have our sample rate. Obviously, I've got it to original, so it is 44.1. It has increased our track loudness to minus 17 LUFS from 19.4. We have a true peak of minus 0.4 dBTP instead of minus 3.1. And we have a peak to loudness ratio of 16.6 still. So dynamic range hasn't changed. All it's done is normalize the level up a little bit because it is just a preparation. It's not actually really doing much to the file at all other than just getting it prepared and getting a little bit of extra level in this case. But we could have changed that, and I could have set it to minus 20 LUFS, let it prepare, and you'll see now the level there is minus 20 LUFS, and the true peak is minus 3.4. If I wanted to go louder, I can make it really loud, and the true peak now is extremely loud, and our audio signal looks like it has been hammered to death on the top and bottom of the barriers there. So probably not a recommended setting, that one. Or we could have left it at original. So if we go back to recommended, then it just picks what it thinks is the best option to keep our peak and loudness ratio identical while giving a little bit of a volume boost. So once we have prepared the file, or it has prepared the file, then we would start playing with our modules to get our song sounding the way we want it to. And then from there, it is going to come to our limiter. So this is going to be our, say, brick wall limiter, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the chain. Now, once you've done all of that, then we come down to our export module here. And this is pretty much similar to the prepare module, where it's a predefined sort of module. And we're just plugging in some settings, and we've got our output path. We can define our start and end. We can then define our format. So if we want to output to WAV or AIFF, we can do our bit depth, whether we're reducing it down to 16 for sort of CD based audio, or we want to keep it at 24. And we have our sample rate, so we can adjust that. Wouldn't bother going higher if you've already got low. And then we've got our same SRC filter. We can turn dither on or off. Now, obviously, if we are outputting to a different bit rate, then we would want to have dither turned on. And we can add a suffix to the name. So I'd imagine what is happening here is that it's basically just going to append that to the end of the audio file name. And then you can click print to file. Now, the start and end can be controlled down here with this little control here. So you can see pulling in to the start there, but you might want to bring that back. You can adjust the end as well. Okay, so on the right hand side here, we have our monitor output control. Now, this program has been adjusting loudness as we've been doing things, and the reason for that is this button here, which is a loudness compensation. So we could have actually turned that off, and it would actually not compensate for any of the changes we make here. So if I want to say, let's just delete all of those. So we've got our limiter, and we could even turn the limiter off. Now, if we play our audio, should be no difference because we're not really doing anything. But now if we turn our limiter on and we've got our gain to something, in this case, let's turn on auto minus 14. We've got some soft clipping. Okay, so it's balancing the loudness now. So when I unclip this, it may get a little bit loud. And you can see it gets reflected on the graph over here as well. And you get a nice indication there of what it thinks needs to happen. So in this case here, it needs to reduce the loudness by -3 dB. Now the point of this is that it obviously gives you a true reflection of what you are doing with the master. So it's pretty common knowledge that loud music sounds better to our ears. We naturally think that we've made improvements by making things louder. Now with this button here, we don't get tricked by that. So any adjustments we make are real, and we can truly hear the difference without volume increase being prepared. Because if I was to turn that off and I sat here and I was doing my mastering and I went, okay, this is what I've got, sounds all right, and then I turn that on and I go, yep, that sounds so much better. But in reality, I haven't done anything. All I've done is turn it up. You know, there's a bit of soft clipping, but the difference here is probably minimal. If I turn soft clipping off and all of that sort of stuff, you can understand what I'm saying. So this feature here is really useful because we want to make sure that we are making improvements by not just turning the volume up. Turning the volume up is obviously something we want to do in mastering, but it shouldn't be something we're basing our opinion on. Now, just a note, so if you are concerned about this button here, it does state in the manual that this is purely the monitor out section is only for listening. So if you want to hear it in its true volume, which is a good idea to do, you turn it off. But when you're exporting this, it's not essential that you turn this button on or off, okay? If it's on, it's still fine. The export has nothing to do with this section whatsoever. This is purely for listening only. So you do not have to turn this button off before you export your audio. Now, another good feature we have here is this mono sum. You know, it's always a good idea to have a listen to your masters in mono, especially if you're using stereo widening tools, to make sure you haven't done anything wrong or you don't need to make some adjustments to compensate for mono. So we can make sure our mastered song sounds good in mono and things sound the way it should be and nothing has disappeared or gone really out of phase. So over here we have some volume settings. Now obviously I've been playing in dim mode, which I could turn off. And we get quite loud. Now we have a fader setting here, and that's this gain control. So we could turn this down and turn dim off. So as I said, we've got dim, which was controlled in the settings. We've also got a reference. And then we have unity, which basically bypasses the fader and makes it a transparent, high quality, straight through monitoring. Which is going to be maximum volume, obviously. Now down in our meters section here, we have the B channel, which is our processed, and then we have the A side, which is our unprocessed. So we can get an idea of where we started here. So we have a peak meter here, peaking up to certain ranges, obviously left and right. We've got some readings down here so you can see exactly what it says. And that's our peak that's coming out. Then we have our loudness setting here. So at the moment it's like -17 LUFS. And then we have our B side, which is our process side. So now, because we've got a limiter on and everything, we're pushing it up to -14. And we're getting our peak pinning up to minus 0.5 there, and you can see where it's sitting there. And we've got this reading here that's our output, but we can adjust that, and adjusting that you'll see is automatically adjusting our limiter there, so we can do it from here as well. And then we have this PLR setting here, which is our peak to loudness ratio. It's sort of like dynamic range, so it's the difference sort of between our peak and our average loudness. So there you go. There is Finalizer by TC Electronics. What did you think of it? Do you think it's something that you'd be willing to try, check it out? Are you thinking of purchasing it? Is it going to suit your style of mastering? Is it the tool that you've been looking for? Some other mastering tools can be very overcomplicated, and maybe this is the one that you've been looking for. It sits right in your realms. Alternatively, maybe this tool is not suitable for you. Maybe it's a bit simple. Maybe you want something that's more advanced, more majorly built, you know, something more like the Isotope tools or even Steinberg Wavelabs or various products like that. Let me know in the comments what you think of it and what you think of what I have shown you so far about the tool, and whether it's something you think is really exciting and definitely something you want to have a look at. Now, for me personally, I thought the tool was quite good. I was a little bit confused at the start when I started using this with a few things, but as I found my way through, read the manual, started to become accustomed to the interface, it started to become a lot more easier to understand and user-friendly. Now, for me personally, there's a few things that I probably would miss going from my products. You know, I'm using Steinberg Wavelab, so, you know, we're talking about very expensive top-of-the-line tools here, so it's not really a comparison, because we're talking about a piece of software here that's pretty reasonably priced compared to something that might be extremely expensive. So, you know, don't take this as a comparison that I think is fair. But there is a couple of features that I would like to see added, if it was to be added, that I would personally miss. One of them was that where I show that you can trim the start and end of the files. What I would really like to see there is the ability to also put some fades on the start and end. It's something that I pretty much do on every song when I go into a master session, so that I can make sure that there's no clicks or pops or anything like that as the song starts and ends. Just a nice way to sort of do that at the end there. Now, for me, obviously, because I'm mastering big sessions, sometimes I would probably miss the ability to be able to do albums and then in turn export to DDP files. If I am doing albums, you know, the ability to lay those tracks out and organize them and do all the work on them at the same time is very handy for me. But for you, maybe that's not a concern. Maybe you do one song at a time and this is exactly what you want out of it. Now, there are ways around doing an album, and you know, you've still got to master one song at a time, but you can obviously bring in the other songs from the album in as the reference track so that you can compare and make sure that they're all level matched and EQ balanced, etc., so they will represent as an album. You just can't obviously build it as an album. Now, the other things that I would miss is that there doesn't seem to be a way to create metadata for the file, so it may inherently write some metadata based on a few things within the program itself, but you can't seem to customize that metadata other than names of the file, etc. So to me, that's something that should be added. There also, you know, not a major concern, but there's no ability to export straight to MP3. That's something I usually will do for myself for quick listening, for, you know, referencing somewhere else. I like to export to MP3. With this program, I'd have to export them all as WAV or AIFF and then use some other program, whether that's iTunes or a specialized program, to convert those files to MP3s or something like that if I want to take it to my car or whatever else I want to do. So, you know, that would be a great feature to add as well. Now, the other big feature for me that's obviously missing, but again, it's not an essential item. This is a decision that TC Electronics have made, that they want you to use their modules. It's a standalone application that is what it is. but the lack of ability to be able to load your own third-party plugins, VSTs, or anything like that, for me is something that's missing, because obviously I've got a lot of that now. So to go to a system that I can't utilize any of those plugins would be a bit of a detriment to me. But again, this tool is probably not designed for someone like me, but it may be designed for you. And obviously the expectation is when you buy this tool, that's what you use. You don't add anything else to it. You don't use external plugins. You don't look for extra features. You use what's in this program as it stands. And it has enough modules in it to get by. There's some stuff that I would use that I would like to bring in, you know, some other features, but they're not always essential. These are the main components that are covered, and it'll get you there. Now, there's obviously no audio repair tools or restoration stuff or anything like that included either. So if you needed to do any corrections like that to remove noises or, you know, issues with files, then you will need to do that with another program. But again, as I said, at this price point, I wouldn't expect those tools to be included. You know, we're talking about a lot more money to get those tools included. So the fact that they're not there, I am just mentioning it to you so you're aware of it. But to me, for this price, it's definitely not an issue. Now, if it wasn't made obvious in the video as I was recording it, I did struggle to understand the graphs a little bit and the concept of them and really how to utilize that to the best of my knowledge. But, you know, it became a little bit more obvious as I went through the process and could start to see what it was doing. Now, I'm not sure that I 100% grasp really how to take the most out of it. I obviously understand what it's doing, but do I understand really how to use that to the benefit of my song? I don't know at this stage. I think I really need to probably run this through its paces, doing a real mastering session as opposed to just running through the features, and just actually try it out and see what I can get out of it and what it means to me. But, you know, that sort of stuff will become more apparent as it goes through. And maybe the back graph will be really beneficial as time goes by and I got used to it, or not. You know, that's time tells with these things. So let me know what you thought in the comments. If you have any questions about it that maybe I can answer, I'll try my best. If you have any advice to me about things that I missed or didn't understand that you could inform me of, that you know, that is so simple that I just missed it and couldn't grasp it, let me know. I'm here to learn from you guys as well. If you did like the video, don't forget to click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. All your support is very much appreciated and very welcome. It helps me out in the channel and keeps me going and keeps me excited and motivated to keep producing this content. So any support you can provide would be fantastic. I hope this has been helpful, and I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.